Namaste, and welcome again to our weekly discussion of the Bhagavad Gita. Last week, we were ending and discussed chapter 4, stanza 23, and I'd like to pick up our discussion from where we left off last week, and we'll progress a little bit further into the Gita. And if you remember, chapter 4, number 23, says that in order for us to attain liberation, or those who have attained liberation, are those souls who have overcome all egoic attachment, have become centered in wisdom, and who, when they do act in this world, every action is one of self-offering. And then Krishna goes on after that 23rd stanza takes 5-6 different stanzas after that to express all the various ways in which one can act in this world and dedicate each action and to one of being self-offering. He gives many examples. And I'd like to just quickly recapitulate some of the examples that he used this morning or right before earlier today. I just wrote them down quickly. You could say these are offerings. It says some people give all of their offerings, everything they do in life, they offer it to the devas. Others offer their little self into the cosmic spirit. Others there are who their spiritual path is one of offering all of their senses into the fire of self-control. Others, Krishna says, offer whatever senses perceive into the fire of higher understanding. Others offer all their sense activities by discrimination, thinking who is hearing, who is acting. Some offer their possessions as a self-offering. Others offer their actions. Some, through yoga, withdraw their energy inwardly and offer it up. Others offer all of their thoughts. Others seek wisdom through the study of scriptures, and what they learn, they offer that up. Others regulate the breath or the energy by correct diet and offer it up into the upward flow. And all of these ways are offering of the ego. They're all symbolic ways. That these are, you might say, outwardly ego expressions of that. But the point made here is that everything that we do, everything outwardly, should be considered a form of offering up, offering the little self up to God. You could say that this is the definition of the spiritual path. People, until they understand this point, merely are acting in this world in a worldly way. In other words, what can I receive out of my actions? I'm serving the little self, and as they do that, we go lifetime to lifetime accruing karma. This is the way of suffering, really. We end up having to accrue that karma and then expiate that karma through one form or another, lifetime after lifetime, until we finally come to the realization that it's through offering everything up. Nothing is ours. It's all God. It's God in the action itself. And so we offer that up to the divine. And in that way, by making everything we do an offering, we then begin to learn freedom and what freedom is and be able to attain that. And so this is, you might say, the mark of somebody who is really begins the spiritual path in a very conscious way. Of course, everybody is on the spiritual path, no matter at what level their understanding is, but to consciously make the effort is when we come to this very simple understanding: nothing is mine. It's all God's, and everything that I do, the outward form, my possessions, my actions themselves, I offer it up into the divine. And so we find that in people, and because we're all made in very different natures, we express that in many different ways. There's a story that expresses this in I think in a beautiful way. There was a great yogi, or he was a practitioner of yoga, and he had been meditating for quite some time and actually had developed certain powers. And he was meditating one day was in deep meditation, but he was being disturbed in his meditation. There was a crow outside of his window, and you know how crows are. They make that cawing sound, caw, caw, and the crow was disturbing the yogi's meditation. And the yogi, noticing this and hearing this and being a little bit perturbed by the crow, thought, oh, if that crow would go away, I wish it would go away. And in that moment, the crow fell from the tree and died. Well, the yogi thought, wow, I guess I'm progressing somewhat in my powers, and he noted it, and I think he probably felt a little bit proud of that. Well, sometime later, not too long after, he had an inner vision of his guru, and his guru came to him in vision and told him that, complimented him, says, "You are making progress, son, but there's still much that you still need to learn." And the yogi, and he says, "Guruji, how can I learn further? What can I do?" And he says, and the Guru said, "You must go to a village, in a distant village." He says, "Go there. There you will find a great saint, and she will be able to teach you much." And so the disciple, the yogi, said, "Yes, sir." And away he went, and making a journey, pilgrimage to this distant village. And when he came to the village, he asked, "And where is so-and-so, this person that his guru had referred him to?" And one of the villagers, "Oh, she lives over on the other side of the village, and there she's the wife of Mr. So-and-so with their family, and she's there with their family," and gave him directions to be able to go there. And so the yogi began to go find his way to this lady's home, and he began to wonder, I wonder, this lady, she has family here, she's householder, what could she possibly teach me? And so he went, but he found the house. His guru had sent him, and so he went and he found the house, and he knocked there on the door and called her attention. And this lady of the household came to the door and says, "Oh, good sir, what can I do for you?" And he said, "I've come to see you I've been sent, and I've come to see you and discuss some spiritual matters with you." And she said, "Oh, okay, good sir, please, I am busy right at the moment. Please, here, take a seat by the door seat here, and wait. I will be with you shortly." And so the yogi took his seat there and began to wait. Well, a little bit of time went by, and more time went by, and he wasn't being attended to. And he says, "Will you be soon?" He says, Yes, I'll be there. You just please sit quietly there, and I'll come." So he sat, and he sat, and he sat. And so what did he do? He began to become perturbed. And he says, "Here I am, and here's this householder lady, and I came all this way, and it's a hot day, and she's not waiting on me." And he began to become perturbed, and he was thinking this way. And the lady calls out, he was sitting quietly, but she calls out, he says, "Good sir, please have patience. I will be with you shortly. I am not your crow." And he paid attention. He said, "She knows." And he realized that she knew all his thoughts. She knew exactly why he had come. And then she said, "Wait patiently, sir. I am busy serving my husband and family. When I am finished, I will come and attend to you." And he realized that she was serving her family. She was basically serving her husband. She was serving him his noontime meal. And then when that was finished, she came to him. Well, the lesson he had to learn was one of pride, of course. He was very proud of his powers. He was very proud of his meditation. But here he had to learn that in whatever way a person serves, that is their particular way to God. But it's the attitude by which we serve. His service perhaps was meditation, but his attitude might have been one of selfishness. Who was he serving in that meditation? Was he serving his guru? Was he serving God? Or was he serving himself? Whereas this lady, serving her husband in the right attitude, was the lesson that she was giving to this anchorite, this sadhu who had come to her. Well, this is how it is with all of our life. The spiritual path is one of self-offering. And in this section of the Bhagavad Gita, and you must remember, Krishna gives quite a bit of emphasis to this because he has many examples that he gives of self-offering, but he comes to one which is more of the focus, you might say, of what we wanted to speak about today. One practice of yoga offers the incoming breath into the outgoing breath, and the prana into the apana, and the apana into the prana, thereby, through pranayama, rendering the breath unnecessary. And of course, for those of you who are Kriyabans, you'll recognize this immediately, is essentially he's describing the practice of Kriya, of learning to neutralize the waves of likes and dislikes, which is I'd say, the definition of yoga as from Patanjali, learning to neutralize these waves by the use of the breath. The breath itself being expression of the likes and dislikes, the rotation of the upward flowing current, the pran into the apan, the downward flowing current. And we revolve this current, these two currents around the central spine through the Irda and the Pingala. And this is basically a summation of what we do through the practice of Kriya, this rotation through using the currents of the breath to neutralize. And in the process of neutralization, we begin to magnetize the spine, the spinal column itself, and begin to draw them through magnetization into the deep inner spine. You can say this is the essence of everything that we're doing outwardly. This is the inward expression of that outward action that we do, of drawing life force up, drawing life force down, and neutralizing these two, because these are representatives of the likes and dislikes of this world. When we have, you can see in your own life, when you have a thought of something, you might say, stimulates you. There's this inhalation of the breath, and you can feel the upward flow. Oh, I like it. And then you could say, when you're disappointed, oh, I dislike it. The inhalation of an affirmation of life, and the exhalation of a withdrawal from life is expressed through this very physical breath itself, this upward flow and this downward flow, and these representing the likes and dislikes, which must be neutralized. So here, the yoga, Kriya Yoga, is the tradition that's passed down, that we can use the physical body, the physical breath itself, as a way to neutralize them through the proper use of pranayama. Now, the deeper side of this, of course, is the breath is stimulated and related to the medulla oblongata. And the medulla oblongata is said to be the seat of ego, the physical seat of ego. It's from the medulla oblongata that an impulse goes out to the lungs themselves to breathe. And so there's control through the autonomic nervous system from the medulla oblongata, from the brainstem. And so using the breath, we can learn to calm it. And that calming effect also has a calming effect upon the very ego, seat of ego itself, which is in the medulla oblongata. And so this is a science of Kriya, which we won't go into here, but the point I'm making is that this inhalation, exhalation, we can neutralize it. And the point Krishna is making, and which is very important for those of us who practice Kriya Yoga, for those who practice any sort of yogic technique, is the attitude in which we do our practices. We must do our practices, and we must do Kriya and any pranayama. It's all done in an attitude of self-offering. We have to feel that I am offering up my breath
And if you practice Kriya, feel that as you draw the life force up the spine, it's not just breath that we're drawing up, or it's not just prana that we're drawing up the spine, but it's our very self, that essence of what the breath is. It represents the ego, and it represents our attachments, it represents our likes and dislikes. It represents these, our very little, small self, and that we're gathering that self up, and that we're offering it up. In a sense, you could say offering it up to the spiritual eye, and we're giving of ourselves through the breath. And then when the life force descends, you could say that we're drawing God's blessings down into us, and going deeper and deeper into our inner self. So make your Kriya practice, and make your Hatha Yoga practice. If even in Hatha Yoga, if you do the exercise, feel that you are releasing not just the tension, not just the kinks and pains of the body, but you're releasing yourself, you could say, into the divine. Much of tension, and especially applies to Hatha Yoga, much of tension is not so much in the physical. Yes, it's there, but what causes that physical tension? If you go deeper into it, you'll see that there's also attitudes that lead to a certain tension. Your approach to life, your approach to how you work in your business, your attitudes to your friends and your family. There's quite a bit of tension in that, in your attitude of one of self-aggrandizement. Now, if you learn to be able to release that in an attitude of outward giving, of relaxation. Now, relaxation we think of as of the body, but it's relaxation of the mind, it's relaxation of the attitudes, and it's relaxation of this sense of little self, this holding on to the ego. We relax our little self into the higher self. And so this is expressed through physical posture as well. But meditation also is this way. When we meditate, we should feel it as a process of relaxation. Relaxation of holding on to our identity and who and what we are into something larger. And in this way, we approach on all levels of yoga, and also outwardly, in our service. When we act, this lady in the story that I told, she in a sense was serving her husband, let's say, and serving his meal, but it wasn't the husband she was serving God. She was using that as an outward expression of service to something higher, of releasing herself in the little self, or releasing the little self into the higher self. So everything we do, if we can think of it in this attitude, we find that little by little, the bonds that hold us, that attach us, begin to be released. And we find that our life begins to flow properly. And intuitively, we begin to understand. You could say it's through the proper expression of this attitude of self-offering that leads to the highest wisdom. All of a sudden, when that relaxation of self-identity begins to happen, we find that intuitively we understand. We begin to understand. Wisdom begins to come to us, and we see life in its proper proportion. We cannot see it in its proper proportion when the ego is held close to the eye. It blocks everything else out. But when we remove it, we begin to see life as it is, and the blessings of that begin to flow to us. Now, of course, I mentioned also, which I'll mention here as well, last week I mentioned it, is the blessings that come to us from the practice of our yoga in right attitude. This is the prasad. And so we offer that prasad just as we do after in pujas and aratis, we offer that out and we share it. And so it is too in the practice of our Kriya, when we find that when we practice the Kriya in the right attitude, we begin to understand and we begin to interiorize, but that has to be offered up. And so consequently, we begin to feel something inside, and we do not want that to stimulate the ego. In this case, like that power that the yogi had with being able to fell the crow. We want to be able to not outwardly express, but we want to inwardly offer that fire that is stimulated by the Kriya, and offer ourselves into that fire, and whatever benefits that come, offer it up into the spiritual eye, offer it to God. It should be the result of proper practice of Kriya is to see ourselves in proper proportion, and it should lead to an attitude of humility. If your humility is, and what is humility? Humility is self-forgetfulness. It's not self-abasement or falsely making ourselves seem small, but it's forgetfulness of the little self. And if that is not growing, then something is slightly off. So everything needs to be an act of self-offering. And so this is what Krishna is doing here. Is he's very specifically speaking about the practice of Kriya. There's you'll find, actually, just one more point about that before we move forward. You'll find that if your practice of Kriya is right, if your practice of service to others is right, if your practice of the spiritual path is right, you'll find that welling up within you will be a joy that comes. You'll begin to feel joyful without a cause. In other words, you're just naturally joyful. It's not anything that happened outwardly, anything that you did. It will be spontaneous in that joy. And one of the prescriptions that the spiritual life can make for somebody who is suffering is if you find yourself unhappy in anything, your life is generally unhappy, not working right, serve. Find something to serve and do for others. Every suffering, and I know this sounds overly hard, but every suffering in your life can be traced back to some degree of self-involvement. And if we can learn to overcome the involvement with the little self, we then begin to understand what life is really about. And we find that joy comes. As Rabbi said, and I've quoted before, the true lover of God is not one who simply forgets his or overcomes his suffering this way or that, but one who forgets his suffering in the contemplation of the divine beloved. And so in that act of service, you're not serving other people, but you're serving the divine through other people, or through whatever the outward form of that action is, of that service is. And then you'll find spontaneously, welling up of itself, joy will begin to come to you. And then, so Krishna goes on to say, which is, I've covered this last week, but I'll read it again. By eating the blessed food, the prasad, left from any of these spiritual fire rituals, one attains to Brahman. Even the blessings of this world come not to one who gives nothing of itself. How then can one hope for happiness in a better world? How can happiness come if one thinks of oneself? And this is exactly what I've just said. So Krishna goes on then to say in stanza 32, the many ways of offering up the ego are declared in the Vedas, as if through the mouth of Brahma. Knowing their true purpose, which is an upward self-offering, you will be freed from all karmic bondage. And here, after these many stanzas, he sums it up. You'll be freed if you offer it up. But it's interesting, he says here, makes reference to the mouth of Brahma. What is that? And this is a bit of an esoterica, but it's good to know, because he's the mouth of Brahma is a reference to the Sushumna, the Muladhara chakra at the base of the spine is the bottom chakra, and it's said that the mouth of Brahma is the opening there. When that opens, it's the energy can go enters into the Sushumna at its base point through that chakra, and that is when that is open, when the Sushumna opens there. And we can begin to
draw the energy into the deeper spine, this is when we begin to enter into deep, real meditation at that point. And that mouth is closed to the degree that we are ego identified, but that mouth opens when we transcend. And so what he's saying here is all of these forms, they all have the same purpose. Everything is in life, in the spiritual life, as we've explained in previous discussions, is directional to this direction, to draw our life force into the deeper spine. Once we have entered into that deeper spine, our life force is entered into the deeper spine, we then can begin to take it on its upward journey up to the brain. Now, I was reading The Holy Science of Sri Yukteswar a while back, and it gave me a great deal of encouragement, and for this reason. He was saying in Kali Yuga, with the age from which we've just emerged, that mankind as a whole is unable to understand the subtler energies of this world and thinks that this outward world is the reality. This is what life is about, the material things. And you see this expressed in scientist materialism, that this world is the final reality. But in Dwapara Yuga, mankind itself begins to understand these inner realities, that there are finer energies, and becomes aware of them. And not just becomes aware of them theoretically, but becomes aware of them experientially. We realize that there are subtler energies within ourselves. And the point that I found inspiring in what Sri Yukteswar said, he said, in Dwapara Yuga, this age in which we have just entered, the general consciousness of mankind will become aware of these subtler energies within the Shushumna, and man will become aware of these energies and begin to focus them upward in a general direction. Now, this is hardly the case in the world today, that only a few are aware of these things, and even those who are theoretically aware, not too many are experientially aware. But you'll find that through the practice of these techniques and through the practice more especially of the techniques, of the attitudes, you'll begin to find that you'll inwardly become aware of this movement of life force up and down the spine. You'll become aware that when you're happy, that when you're self-forgetful, lower self-forgetful, lower S and self-forgetful, you'll become aware that you're happy, and you'll see that there's an upward movement, an upward direction of that. And everything that we do outwardly will lead to the same result of withdrawing the life force into the spine. And once we feel that happiness in the spine, an upward directional flow. And as this becomes the general consciousness of mankind as a whole in the world, that's said at that point that this earth is in Dwapara Yuga. We're not there yet, but what Sri Yukteswar has said, that we have entered into the beginning phases of that movement into Dwapara Yuga. Krishna then goes on to say in number 33, he says, the inner spiritual fire ceremony of rising awareness is superior, O scorcher of foes, Arjuna, to any outward act of self-offering. In this wisdom alone is all action, karma, consumed. So let me read this again. And this is again what we emphasize in the practice of Kriya Yoga. He's referring to this. He says, some pour the pran into the apan into the pran. He says this inner fire, this inner spiritual fire ceremony of rising awareness is superior, Arjuna, to any outward act of self-offering. In this wisdom is all action consumed. Now, the outer has its place. Obviously, we have to do outward things. But the outer leads us to an inner understanding. And this is why it's said that Kriya is said to be the highest of spiritual techniques, because this is actually what all outer action is leading us to. Everything outward is, you might say, an outward fire ceremony. And we burn the fire, and into the fire we throw the ghee and we throw the rice. And these are symbolic, as we know. These are symbolic. But besides rice and the ghee, everything outward service, and I do not mean to diminish it here, but everything outward is an outward expression, representative and symbolic of what is happening inside. And the science of Kriya goes directly to that inner reality and goes to that inner upliftment of life force that it will neutralize. And in this way, this becomes the inner fire ceremony in which all karma is burnt and annihilated. And this is the promise of the great yogis of Kriya, our masters of Kriya Yoga. Through the proper practice of Kriya, we burn the seeds of our karma. We say that karma is like a vortice, a vritti of energy swirling in the spine. Every thought or desire that you have is a commitment of energy. That desire you had as a child for something, that favorite toy, or as a young person, that ambition, that desire that you had, you thought about it, and you made a commitment of life force, of thought energy toward its fulfillment. Now, you grow up into an adult. It doesn't mean that commitment of energy has gone away. Put yourself in circumstances favorable, and those old past seeds of karma begin to sprout again. So they're lying dormant, waiting for the right time to be able to flourish again. And so it is. Millions of lifetimes, perhaps, of past thoughts, past desires, past commitments of energy are stored in the deep astral spine, waiting for the proper time to flourish. And time, as circumstances change, this is why it's said, be careful of your circumstances. Environment is stronger than willpower, because we find you put yourself in a proper environment, and one of those old desires will begin to find, a nourishment in which to take root and to actually bear fruit. So we've stored these up, and we work out these karmas from lifetime to lifetime. The problem is that as quick as we work them out, we gain new ones. Many times I've heard people say something, they've done something, perhaps they've fulfilled the desire, and says, well, I've completed that karma, as if they've now freed themselves. Well, yes, maybe they have freed themselves from that karma, but in the process they've created two more. And so it's never ending to try to work your karma out outwardly in this way simply by fulfilling your desires. It doesn't work that way. You have to be able to withdraw from them. And as Krishna's been saying, we have to withdraw from them. And that alone, just withdrawing, is not enough either. We have to burn them up in the fire of deep understanding, in the cauldron of divine bliss. All of these desires have to then be thrown into that. And so outwardly, we do the fire ceremony and we throw these desires in there, but the real fire ceremony, the true fire rite, is that inward burning of them in the fire of divine joy. And so this is what we do when we practice Kriya. We should feel that we're drawing the life force up, drawing the life force down, and the benefit and the fruit of that is a sense of divine self-offering, a feeling of divine bliss, a feeling of divine joy, love, that happiness. And as we offer up all of our desires, all of those fruits from the past, we loosen the seeds through the practice of Kriya, and those seeds begin to fall into that fire. And so when we finish our Kriya practice, and if we felt the sense of inner calmness, peace, joy, we need to sit very quietly and enjoy that. But in the enjoyment, not for the little self, but in the enjoyment of offering ourselves up into that divine fire. This is the true fire right. And this is toward what all action leads. All spiritual action leads to this, is to interiorize ourselves, to be able to offer ourselves, and to burn the fruits of past action in the fire of divine offering. And Krishna follows who says, understand this above all. By surrender of self-will to the wise, by sensitive inward and outward questioning of the wise, and by service to the wise, those who have realized the truth will be able to convey their wisdom to you. And so what does he say here? Learning to, we've done all of this, we've done self-offering, we've done this inner fire right, and this stanza particularly applies to offering everything that we've had, that we've done. All action, all of our sadhana is an offering to the Divine Guru. And it's beautiful that the way Krishna brings that in at this point. He's given us the techniques, he's given us the means, he's given us the goal, and at the end, he emphasizes all of this. Offer it up to the feet of thy divine Guru. It's essential that we have that as well. The Guru is you could say, a representative, an instrument of the divine. We can offer things up to the divine directly, yes, and we should try to always do that. But remember that it's through the Guru that these techniques have been given to us. It's through the Guru that that blessings have been given to us as a disciple. And so we offer it back to the Guru as an instrument through which we offer it up to God. Many people often have asked the question, is it necessary to have a Guru? I mean, why? And why have one? I mean, is it really necessary? And this isn't the discussion to go into that deeply here, but yes, it's important to have the Guru. We have to have that divine connection in some fashion. God works in this world in all things through instruments. God is working through the wind. God is working through other people. God is working through every physical reality that we surround ourselves with. And in some fashion or another, everything acts as an instrument. Well, the purest of all instruments is a soul who is in divine communion with the Lord. And through this instrument, this is the Guru, that the Guru or the God works with each one of us. And so we offer back to God everything that has come to us. And so we offer it to that instrument through which the divine has come into this world. So yes, this is the divine tradition that has been passed on to us from ancient times. Remember how Paramahansa Yogananda starts the autobiography of a yogi. What has sustained India and the culture of India and the Vedic tradition through all of these millennia. It's through that search for eternal verities and the disciple-guru relationship, which has been able to pass these verities on from one generation to the next. So whatever we do, do it in that spirit, and you'll find that you're in attunement with the Guru, you're in attunement with God. Some also ask, well, Paramahansa Yogananda, he's not with us any longer. How can I possibly offer my blessings to him? Well, the blessings of the Guru passed down through his disciples, through one generation to the next. Paramahansa Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda said, he's the Guru of this path, of these teachings. In these teachings, many gurus will arise in the future as people attain self-realization. Others too become gurus, but they become gurus in the teachings. Are the masters, Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda, these are the gurus of our teachings. And so when you do your self-offering, offer yourself up. And if you're a disciple, specifically I'm speaking to Kriyabans here, if you're a Kriyaban, a disciple, offer what you have up to the Guru
serve the Guru, but don't make it theoretical. Make it real. Offer yourself, offer what you have materially. You'll even there offer it up to God and Guru, and if not God and Guru directly, to God and Guru, to his work, serving in some fashion. In this way, we complete the cycle of prosperity. When you receive prasad, or prasad after the arati, it's important to share. And if you can find ways in your life to share. Yes, share materially. If you're a prosperous person and you keep that just to yourself, you'll find that yes, you have good karma, that you're prosperous in this lifetime, but it'll run out and then you'll have to start again. But if you want to keep that prosperity going lifetime to lifetime, learn to let that prosperity pass through you to help others. But more important than physical prosperity is the inner prosperity, the joy, the happiness that you feel, whatever you've gained from this path of Kriya Yoga. Make sure that you share it and don't keep it for yourself. Share, and more important above all, that is represented, prosperity, outward prosperity, your joy, all of these represent also the ego. To truly self-offer is to give up that sense of I and mine, me, mine. Give it up. It's what's binding us. It's what causes all of our unhappiness. When we can learn to just give it to God. God, you work through me. You are the doer. I offer myself to you. You'll find in that attitude, everything begins to come to you. Not just outwardly, but inwardly as well. This is why we practice Kriya, why we practice yoga, why we do any of these things. Is to let go of that little self and to enjoy the higher self. But that enjoyment comes naturally of itself when we let the little self